Our special guest, Your Excellency Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Our chief host, Mr. Ni Yusuf, Chairman of the Board, NESG. Your Excellencies, very distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Summit House, the seat of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group. This presidential dialogue is geared towards an opportunity of an informed engagement on critical themes driving the current state of the Nigerian economy and generating insights for the road ahead as we approach another transition in our democratic journey. This is another unique opportunity, a platform for our special guest to discuss his economic agenda in an environment of civil discourse. We are privileged to have the candidate of the All Progressives Congress, His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, as our first guest in the series. Permit me to also formally recognize all the eminent personalities to the Summit House. With these few words, may I now invite the chairman of the NESG, Mr. Ni Yusuf, for his welcome address.
Thank you, and good morning. Your Excellencies, Directors, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Board of Advisors and also the Board of Directors of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, it's an honor and a pleasure to formally welcome you to the Summit House, the headquarters of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, NESG. The NESG was founded in 1996 to give effect to a common and shared national agenda between the government, the private sector, and other stakeholders to reform the Nigerian economy into one that is open, globally competitive, sustainable, and inclusive. This agenda is anchored around the permanent public-private sector dialogue process and a mechanism that relies on the annual Nigerian Economic Summit, which is in its 29th year in this year, 2023. At the first summit in 1993, national stakeholders from across the government, the business sector, society, academia, and the development sector agreed on the 6 principles for promoting the reform of the Nigerian economy. And these are: 1, the need to have a commitment to an open and free enterprise and market economy. The second principle is a private sector-led investment to drive economic growth. The third principle being the creation of an enabling business environment. The fourth foundational principle for the NESG is governance in the national interest. The fifth is the rule of law and rule-based markets. And the last, which is the sixth, is democratic accountability. And these principles form the foundation for the modern Nigerian economy and the focus of the work we do at the NESG. At the NESG, we pay to serve, and all we do, it's in the national interest. Therefore, it is premised on this foundation, thanks to reforming the economy, that I'm delighted to welcome you here to this presidential dialogue on the economy. We acknowledge the immense sacrifice His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the campaign team, and the Presidential Campaign Council have made in creating time for this interaction this morning, and the NESG does not take it for granted. Thank you, Your Excellencies, for the pleasure of your attention and of your attendance at this event today. It's now 42 days before the presidential election, so we're here in critical times. The events before, during, and after the upcoming elections have the potential to shape the trajectory of the Nigerian economy and our fortune as a nation. The 2023 elections is a crucial determinant of the future prosperity of our dear country. Given the critical state of our economy and the challenges we are facing, we have therefore seen a heightened sense of consciousness and alertness from citizens in terms of their participation in the forthcoming election. And we see citizens who are more willing to interrogate and participate in the electoral process, as we have not seen in the past. The reforms of the Electoral Act 2022 have also led to this strengthened collective resolve to participate in the election process. Therefore, the challenge before us all, as political parties, nation builders, or concerned citizens, is to ensure that the key issues capable of shaping our economy and capable of determining the trajectory of the economy are situated at the center stage of the conversations and of the campaigns of the political parties. And of course, also influence other forms of engagement between the parties and the citizens. As the 2023 elections draw near, it is essential to provide an opportunity to engage with presidential candidates on the state of the economy and discuss their strategies and their plans for tackling the core issues plaguing the Nigerian economy. In light of this, the NESG, in continuance of our tradition of providing a platform for sharing insights and also perspectives on the Nigerian economy, has organized this presidential dialogue on the economy to accentuate further discussions of the roadmap towards having a prosperous and inclusive economy. Before we proceed to the agenda for the day, I would like to outline that the presidential dialogue will focus on economic issues. Issues around the macroeconomy, exploring the macroeconomic instability, GDP, inclusive growth, productivity, inflation, unemployment, foreign exchange issues, and fiscal management, which will also delve into areas of revenue, debt, and oil and gas reforms. Because today's entire dialogue engagement is focused on these matters, I would only want to note the following key issues. Firstly, macroeconomic instability has over the years undermined our economy's efficiency and impoverished our people, especially the vulnerable groups. Our economy has experienced 2 recessions within a decade. Even though our average growth over the period is still positive, there is need to have more significant improvement in the socio-economic conditions of our people. Rising inflation have also eroded the purchasing power of the average Nigerian. As a result, unemployment and inequalities have gone to unacceptable levels. Secondly, in terms of GDP and inclusive growth, the economy's cumulative average growth, the average growth rate is extremely low for a developing economy and a frontier nation like Nigeria. The economic capacity to create jobs, to reduce poverty, and to enhance social inclusion continues to be limited due to the narrow growth base that we have today. Also, we are experiencing weak economic competitiveness as the structure of the economy needs to deliver the scale and the magnitude of economic outcomes we desire, and also bearing in mind our population growth rate. Thirdly, Nigeria is struggling at the cliff of a debt crisis. While our debt to GDP ratio, including waste and means, remains low, Debt servicing to revenue, it's high. The ratio soared to unsustainable levels. Invariably, the next administration will grapple with a tight fiscal space if this trend persists. The evidence suggests that while revenue is a problem, other factors must also be considered. Our external position is critically worsening with continued fading foreign direct investment. The details of the NESG's assessment of the historical tragedy of our economy that has got us here and the way forward are captured in a report that we've done called Understanding the Nigerian Economy. And this report has been prepared for all the presidential candidates as our own contribution to the discourse. This report, combined with the 2023 macroeconomic outlook that the NESG will launch on Wednesday, January 18th, offers an extensive set of strategy policy options for driving sustainable national competitiveness, inclusive growth, and shared prosperity. We recommend both reports for your serious consideration and are open as the NESG to work with you afterwards to continue to engage on matters that you might want to explore further in the two reports. Considering the enormous challenges facing us as a nation and confronting our economy, it is evident that the new government from 29th of May 2023 must be ready for office from day one and be ready to demonstrate an understanding of the issues and be capable of appointing the most competent people to key positions that can hit the ground running. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is the NESG's hope and desire that this presidential dialogue will begin a process that is more than just sharing our ideas and insights, but a vibrant and dynamic exchange of ideas, of evidence-based insights on critical issues of the state of the economy that shows our leading contenders and the presidential candidates to the highest office in the land how to distill strategic focus on policy options, policy priorities, economic reforms that will drive urgent action from day one. This will help anyone elected into the office of president to understand the problems facing us as a country and the importance of well-articulated strategies for tackling them. We are honored to welcome you to the Summit House this morning. We're also glad to have you in the maiden presidential dialogue, and I wish everyone a very fruitful deliberation. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Neil Yusuf, Board Chair, NESG. At this time, may I invite a gentleman who serves as the Director of Research and Chief Economist of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, Dr. Olusegun Omisaki, for his presentation on the state of the economy.
Good morning, everyone. And I would like to say that Mr. Chairman has talked a lot about the state of the economy. And my job this morning is to put some data and some context so that will also help us in our discussion today. Globally, we all know that the world is facing serious challenges, especially from year 2020 when COVID-19 started. Again, last year, we also had some regional imbalances and crises everywhere. And so the discussion today naturally have a global dimension to it. But this crisis has impacted different countries at different levels. Some are hugely impacted, some are not really been impacted, probably because of the current state of their economic stability or policy interventions. This crisis has also impacted different countries through trade, policy channels, and the rest. Now, why different countries are facing the same so-called challenges? Some have moved faster, some are still crawling, and some have indeed beat the global expectation of recovery. The case of Nigeria is not different. We all agree that when COVID-19 came, it was expected that Nigeria would struggle to come out of this positively. Why? Because we had previous cases of recession and the economy was weak. But Nigerian economy proceeded from the negative territory in 2020 to positive in 2021 and recorded the same positive growth in 2022. And this is not just a natural occurrence. This came about as a result of some policy implementation from both the private and the public sectors, and some initiatives from the government. Few of them are listed here. The government started with the Economic Stability Plan that kind of gave direction to different intervention to stabilize the system during the crisis. We also noticed that there was a huge improvement in the ease of doing business generally because of the payback interventions, incentives, especially in the SMEs and the other private sectors. Also, we can see that the non-oil sector performed excellently in that it started to be like the major driver of growth, exports, government revenue, and output. And we also noticed that government intensified its efforts with respect to investment, especially those ones that pertain to the public transport infrastructure. So the economy grew, and this is a good sign that if we can grow like this, we even do better. Why Nigeria recorded this impressive positive growth? Some countries are still struggling with theirs, but we need not sit down with this level of growth. We need to envision a better path. We need to envision a more successful growth level that will not only be based on recording positive growth, but growth that is high, that is fast, that is inclusive, and that is sustainable. And that's one of the core issues why we are here today. And so to do that, we need to look inward. We need to look at the current state of the Nigerian economy and ask ourselves, what do we have to change? What policy do we have to improve? What way do we go from here? And so I'm here today to also discuss with you some critical themes that are driving Nigeria's socioeconomic narratives. One is the fact that we can all agree to this, that the economy is weak, and the economy is non-inclusive. When the economy is weak, of course, it implies also that the production capacity will be challenged, and then the employment capacity will also be challenged. And that is why we have different situations with respect to growth. If we bring some perspectives to this, from 2012 to 2022, we can notice few things. Number one, Nigeria had been in economic recession for 2 times. The first one in 2016 and the second one in 2020. We came out positively, good for that. But on the average, we can say all we have done with GDP growth rate is just that we recorded 3%. This is not good enough for a country that want to be a giant of Africa, indeed, and that want to be one of the major countries driving the global production and policy narrative in the world. But when you look at the size of the growth itself, we can see a huge divergence between the the nominal growth rate and the real growth rate. The real is where key issues are. This is where we see how this growth rate impacts on the common people, especially when you look at people's income. We can easily conclude that now, because of the fact that inflation crisis is there, and then we also have the exchange rate crisis, on the average, Nigerians are earning less every year. And so if you look at the graph, we have the same real income on the average from 2012 to 2021. We are more or less the same, even though our nominal growth is going up. The same could be said in terms of the dollar rate. These are the crises that we need to talk into. But why do we get ourselves into this? The only solution is to see where the problem came from, and that is our productive capacity. We look at the sectors. How are the sectors of the economy doing? To make any meaningful, impactful policy intervention, we need to look at how our sectors are structured and how they are performing in terms of their contribution to GDP, in terms of their growth itself. So let's look at the breakdown. We have major three categories of economic sector classification. We have the agri sector, we have the industrial sector, and then we have a service sector. Among these three, only the industrial sector recorded a negative growth, minus 5.7. But if we look at it from the oil and the non-oil sector contribution or growth, we can also see that the oil sector declined by minus 20. This narrative is not just about now. The sector has been performing less than the capacity for long. And that explains one of the reasons why we had already established that the economy is weak and that it's non-inclusive, because oil sector has the capacity to impact on the inclusiveness of the economy, either from government, it provides revenue for the government, it's a major foreign source of foreign exchange, and so many other factors. Another issue we see from here is the fact that even some sectors are recording above 10%, 15, 20% growth rate. This 2022, yes, this is fantastic, but most of these sectors contribute lower than other sectors in the economy. You talk about the first sector, the transports, and the rest. You see the contribution is really low. But when you look at the ICT, you look at the next sector, agri, and the rest, we see the growth rate is so weak, especially agri sector. Agri has been very, very important in the narrative of the Nigerian economy. But this time around, we recorded 1.8 growth rate for agri. We need something drastic to make sure that the weight that we put on agri as a driver of growth is not too much for the sector to bear. We know we had recorded different negative growth rates, especially for oil and gas sector. We are concentrating on this sector because it's so important for the Nigerian economy. We expect to see that when oil prices are increasing, we want to see that the rate of production of oil and gas increases. I want to see that their growth rate will also increase. But what we notice is the opposite. The oil price is improving, but our growth rate in the oil and gas sector is declining. In fact, as the trend has started around 2012, so we have recorded a kind of weak performance over time in this sector. And that explains why the contribution to growth of this sector also follows the trend. So we really need urgent, holistic, and deep reform in this sector. We need to look at how we tackle the problem of low crude oil production, the problem of high cost of production, especially when you compare that with our comparator countries, the problem of weak investment in the sector, and also the big elephant in the room, which is the oil subsidy. This oil subsidy is not just a narrative from the fiscal side. Of course, it's indeed a big narrative there, but it's also a big narrative in this sector until we get a final solution to how the sector operates that encourages appropriate pricing, that encourages investment, then this sector will continue to be, in the recession, at the negative territory. The second point, which is very, very important, is the macro stability. This clearly is like the foundation of the economy. It doesn't matter what type of intervention or policy that is being, implemented. When the macro stability, when the foundation is weak, every impact will not be felt. And so we need to look at this macro stability very, very seriously. And when we talk about macro stability, we're talking about the inflation rate, we're talking about the poverty level, we're talking about the unemployment rate, we're talking about our labor productivity. Let's look at what happens to poverty rate, especially, whether we measure that from the monetary index or we use the multi-dimensional index. The situation is not looking good. We moved from 10% or 10.6% to 33% in unemployment rate. That suggests that the impact will be hugely felt among those who are unemployed. And that's why we have an average of 63% of Nigerians who are poor. If we go by a multidimensional measurement, which goes beyond how much you earn, which also discusses how your living environment is, your education, and so many other factors. And it doesn't matter how we look at the dimension of unemployment, whether by gender, or by residence, or by level of education. The point is, this is a big problem, especially when you look at it from 2012 to 2022. So we need urgent intervention in any reform that will see that we alter the trajectory and then we achieve a well-balanced situation. And the third one is also that our external performance, even though we are doing great when it comes to the oil and on our trade, we are doing more exporting than imports. That is very impressive. But we have other challenges that are making these positive indicators to be less felt among Nigerians, especially when you look at the fact that our investment inflow is going down, when you look at the fact that our external reserve is also going down, and also the crisis in the exchange rate there. So the last one here is the fiscal pressure. We all know that. The chairman has talked about the debt crisis, but the major challenge under that is the fact that our revenue space is limited, and that encourages our borrowing. And if you look at from 2012 to 2022, you see the difference between our external debt. It rose from 9% to 9 trillion naira to 44 trillion naira, excluding the ways and means and other sources of growth. So we have other challenges, but those ones we've highlighted are capable of making sure that we turn around what we see now, whether it's social challenges, whether the economic competitiveness or security challenges, if we apply appropriate policy recommendations. So based on what we see last year, this is how we think 2023 will go if we do nothing about it. We are expecting to have the same weak performance when it comes to economic growth. Inflation pressure might continue. The poverty and unemployment rate might continue. We are going to have a more of a pessimistic scenario this year if we do nothing. So it means if we are ready to do something, not just something, but to do something holistic from either the way we define benefit for an average Nigerian to the role of market, especially the role of market when it comes to pricing, when it comes to incentives, and also to what happens to the sectoral reforms and to the way we plan together as one, from subnationals to the national, and also to how we define our social reforms, the education, the health, and lastly, how we talk to the issue of safety, security, and national cohesion. So if we address this, we have a more optimistic expectation of 2023, and indeed, going forward, things can change positively if we look at this policy agenda. Thank you.
Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, as we ponder and reflect on Dr. Omishakin's presentation on the economy, may I, at this time, invite you to the appetizer of why we are here. And this will be the keynote insights by His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the presidential candidate, All Progressives Congress.
Thank you very much. Good morning. The captains of the industry, Your Excellencies, the governors, my friends, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good morning. The last of the presentation that we just had is about safety, security, coercion. Without a solution to that, we have nothing to look forward to as a nation. So let me assure you that that will be tackled headlong, and every inch, every aspect of Nigerian problem in that area will be well attacked. Get that assurance from me. Indeed, it is my pleasure to join you here today at this Nigerian Economic Summit Group, the presidential dialogue. Over the years, the NESG has successfully carved a niche for itself with its annual flagship event, the Nigerian Economic Summit, and built a reputation as a respected platform across the continent for pragmatic engagement as well as continuous tracking through its standing sectorial working groups. Importantly, you have seamlessly represented the interests of both domestic and foreign investors, and your collective voice breathed life into economic policy and has on occasion transcended to core democratic rights and ideals enshrined in our national constitution. Today, I seek not to deceive you with unrealistic, unattainable promises and policies. Yet, I'm equally averse to repeating the sharp-won, unimaginative policies that have frequently failed in the past. Instead, I want to express to you my vision of the way forward. I believe this vision is bold, yet pragmatic. Difficult, yet attainable. More importantly, it will yield greater success than the setback if we remain true to our objective and disciplined implementation. Some of what I say you may agree with, some may not. However, I did not accept this invitation to tell you only what you want to hear. As a potential president of this country, this diverse and complex nation, my constituency and the scope of my concerns encompass a wide breadth. My team and I have the capacity to improve security and reform the economy in a way that gives Nigeria its best opportunity to thrive. As governor of Lagos State, I'm glad we are here in Lagos. And I'm glad you are using this building and you are on this street. If the name is changed. Without adequate investment and attention, you will not be here. You won't feel comfortable. So as a governor of Lagos State, we developed institutions and policies that helped change the face of the state. It became a safer place and a more robust engine of prosperity for those willing to work towards their economic dreams. Why the precise actions and policies we follow will not be identical. We will bring the same practical problem-solving approach to the issues confronting the national economy. My core belief is that the private sector must be the prime driver of economic progress. However, government establishes the framework within which the private sector must operate. If that framework is sound, the private sector will flourish. If the framework is free or incomplete, then the private sector will struggle. On microeconomic environment, we cannot delve into the problems and solutions to our economy without considering the global context in which we operate. In these past 15 years, the world had experienced a financial crisis that came dangerously close to being a global depression. The world also faced a novel pandemic called COVID-19 that yet to flare on its course. Geographical competition occasioned by the shift in international arrangement has sparked tensions and wars, such as the war in Ukraine. The extreme weather begat the climate change that further undercut global harvests, lowering food production, increasing shortages, and causing prices and instability to rise. The global economy has been slow to resolve and to adapt to the new conditions. Such claims remains unreliable. Production is suppressed. Trade costs increase. Political tensions spread. During this period of global headwind, the economic's average growth has been positive, but not robust enough to translate into significant improvement in the socio-economic condition of the people. Our administration, when elected, we urgently address fiscal, monetary, and trade reform to effectively increase domestic production, thus serving to curb imported inflation and to ensure better macroeconomic stability by accelerating inclusive growth and job creation across Nigeria. Here, let me state some general principles that will guide our policies and plans. First, to achieve the economic we seek, we must resolve the pressing security issues. No nation can flourish with the terrorists and kidnappers in their midst. I said this earlier on. Second, individual nations have been slow to compensate for the lag of global economy by engaging in more domestic production for national or regional consumption. Thus, we have entered a time of both recession and inflation. But this inflation, as well as the recession, are not primarily caused by excessive demand. This type of inflation is caused by what we hope is a temporary drop in production and supply. I do not hold to the mainstream view that all forms of inflation are best tackled by interest rate hikes and shrinking the economy. Supply-induced inflation does not lend itself to this harsh medicine, just as one does not cure a headache by plucking out one's eye. Third, I do not embrace the conventional wisdom that fiscal deficits by the national government are inherently bad. All government, especially this era of fiat currency, runs circular budget deficits. This is an inherent part of modern governance. The most powerful, wealthiest government run deficits, as do the poorest nations. Must and forced to do the same. A budget deficit is not necessarily bad. Look at Japanese example with high government borrowing and low inflation. The real issue is whether the deficit spending is productive or not. Unproductive deficit spending is a compound negative, especially if backed by excessive borrowing of foreign currency. This is not classroom economics, but it is the lesson of the real economic history of nations. Fourth, it is based upon this idea that I believe we must remove the PMS subsidy immediately. It has outlived its usefulness. It served life as a public good. We will never subsidize neighboring countries' fuel consumption, nor allow a select few to reap windfall profits and hoard our products. And the subsidy money will not be saved because that means eliminating from the economy. Instead, we will redirect the fund into public infrastructure, transportation, affordable housing, education, and health, and strengthen the social safety net for the poorest of the poor, thus averting increasing security challenges. Fifth, fiscal policy will be the main driver. Monetary policy is weaker and a less effective instrument. Bad monetary policy is, of course, destructive. But even good monetary policy cannot carry the load the physical arm can. Thus, we must steadily remove ourselves from the fiction of tying our budget to dollar-denominated oil revenue. This is effectively pegging our budget to a dollar standard. It is an outdated as well as the fuel subsidy that we mentioned earlier on. It is also restrictive and ties the economy to slow growth, just as the common man must mentally severe the code to the subsidy, the elite must severe the code to this artificial fiscal restraint. Instead, let us begin to produce budgets based upon what we believe is needed to achieve optimal growth without producing excessive inflation. It is a better path to sustainable growth and shared prosperity. Therefore, when elected, our budgeting will be based upon projected spending level needed to push real annual growth to above 10%. While reducing the unemployment rate so that we can double the economy in 7 years. Sixth, we are a nation of over 200 million souls. Over have lived in urban areas. The vast majority are young. If we do not expand our manufacturing base to provide jobs and also create affordable goods and products for the population, we have much larger problem on our hands in near future. Our National Industrial Instrument Infrastructure Plan must be given the full breadth. This includes solving the power problem, perennial problem that's been confronting us for several years. Seventh, climate change is real. Yes, to achieve a national political consensus needed to address this problem, we must promote climate justice and not cast it as a stark trade-off with the economic growth, particularly for developing countries. I stop here and ask you questions. How do you ask me not to use firewood? Protect my forest. When my children are hungry at home. Yes, we believe in the sanctity of agreement and consensus. We sign off before Ukraine war. But yet, nobody promised us what we could do to reactivate and recharge Lake Chad. What is the level of our development? So, we will consult all of you. Be bold. What is happening to our coal? Can we attract investment? Can we get waivers to really bring about uninterrupted, steady, right voltage, right transmission of power to drive our economy? It's a must. You can't ask us to sign off. And implement something that may cut off our head to cure the headache of others. We will achieve all this through close consultation and collaboration with the private sector to determine the right policy mix to get us towards our shared goal. Yes, we talk of inclusive growth through productivity. I agree. Productivity and competitiveness are essential if Nigeria is to increase export and take maximum advantage of African continental free trade area through strong industrial base. For our industries to thrive, they need inputs, many of which are agriculture-based. The present administration has invested heavily in agriculture, providing loans and expanding the country's total area of cultivated land for crops, livestock, fishery, and others. We will also promote vibrant commodity exchange that will guarantee minimum pricing for produce. With that stimulant, yes, people will resort to agree. Now we are planting and harvesting only one time a year. Should we continue that way? I think we achieve the growth and food security expected. I say no. We must try minimum 2 times harvesting period a year. We will build on this with a focus on using technology and expertise to accelerate the growth and yields. We will deliver the critical infrastructure necessary to achieve the commodity transformations and agribusiness to plug seamless into higher, more lucrative entry points in regional and global value chains. In fact, the real strength of any economy rests on the backbone of its infrastructure. Already, the present administration has made unprecedented strides, completing several key projects all across the country, which has been pending for decades, spanning over 1,000 kilometers of roads and bridges, such as Second Niger Bridge, very proud of. The Lagos-Ibadan high-speed rail connected to Apapa Port, the Ajaokuta-Kaduna-Kano gas pipeline, the NESG train 7, 5 new international airport terminals, and many more. Building on this foundation, we will accelerate the faithful implementation of the Infrastructure Master Plan. If necessary, join us to amend it if you have questions. But we will adopt proven financial structure till we deliver an acceptable stock of hard infrastructure through seaports and airports and road, rail, water transportation, linkages that can support our desired economic growth. I assure you. Fixing the perennial problem of energy supply is a top priority. I agree with you. There is no version of the world where Nigeria's ambition for itself can be achieved without solving the problem of how to provide energy to homes, businesses across the country. We have privatized power distribution in Nigeria and generation to a certain degree. What we need to do going forward is to improve the enabling environment for that decentralized transmission and deliver cost-reflective tariffs to attract more private investment in this sector. Broadband infrastructure is critical for the expansion of our technology ecosystem, which has already been attracting record amount of global financial attention in recent years. We shall support the sector to grow into a full-fledged digital economy with a significant effect on our economic development and progress. With micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises contributing nearly half of Nigeria's GDP, generating over 80% of all jobs in the country, our administration will continue to prioritize the implementation of ease of doing business and reforms. You, members of the economic team, be prepared, think, and let's do. Do it together. We shall also prioritize policy that will enable access to credit and promote financial inclusion. Interest rates must be significantly reduced. This will spur a mortgage and consumer credit revolution where cars, appliances, housing will be more available and create an expected boom in our economy. Yes, talk about inflation. Let me say a bit more on my position regarding inflation. I do not discount its severity. I know the effort it can cause for individual businesses and the overall economy. With this supply-driven inflation, to impose the usual anti-inflation medicine on higher interest rates and tighter monetary supply will only weaken the patient and push it to life support if we are not careful. The answer is not to suppress normal aggregate demand levels. This weight on the demand side will do little to answer the root causes. We punish the national economy and people without deriving any meaningful benefit. The better solution is to find ways to stimulate production and supply. We must therefore acknowledge the need to fix some domestic imbalances. If we agree, and we must agree, to do that together. On foreign exchange, import and foreign exchange restrictions aimed at promoting industrialization have increased the smuggling, reduced revenues, impoverished the consumers, and raised production costs to firms. By improving transparency and moving toward a unified exchange rate, and by relaxing stifling trade and capital control policies, domestic foreign investors will be encouraged to invest more in our economy. Thus, unification of the Naira exchange and the transparency it will create will be a top priority of this administration when elected. Be assured. Unemployment. Today, 300,000 Nigerians enter the labor market every month. As we fix the fundamentals by boosting the industrialization through targeted regulatory reforms, the unemployment rate will fall as overall economic activities will grow. Taking this creative sector as one example of a sector that already engages millions of our youth, the sector has significant untapped potential for generating quality jobs and foreign exchange earnings for our country. From music to movie to fashion, when elected, our administration will create a legal environment that can attract much needed private investment in the sector, eliminate widespread piracy and copyright issues, as well as support the development quality hard infrastructure needs, physical management and sustainability of debt. For the size of our economy and the amount of work that we need to do, Nigeria is not spending too much. In fact, we are not yet at the right spending level at all. However, our development cannot be achieved by ineffective spending of borrowed funds. We will work to ensure all borrowing is geared towards productive economic activity, focusing on internal debt discipline, revenue mobilization. We talk about it. Generally, those who think finance, we know there are holes. Sometimes we feel we are pouring water into the basket. We are determined that we will close the physical gaps, promoting domestic revenue mobilization, implementing tax reforms, curbing corruption, and optimizing budget implementation. They are crucial for the economic viability. Streamlining bureaucracy, reducing costs of governance will be the imperative. Policy options to boost non-oil revenue are key to revenue mobilization strategy. The use of technology to drive reforms implementation is very crucial. On oil and gas reforms, despite the adoption of the Petroleum Industry Act 2021, the PIA, government revenue from oil has continued to decline. We shall work in a coordinated manner to implement reforms that will remove the bottleneck to the PIA implementation and attract increased inflow of investment into the sector. It is necessary to address the issues of oil theft. We will eliminate it. Leadership is important here. Decision process is important here. Understanding who you are and necessary action. We address the issue of oil theft and vandalization of oil infrastructure and promote an increase in oil production to tap the current high oil prices. International trade and investment. We must admit that investor perception of the Nigerian economy has played a role as well. Investors must be able to repatriate funds and earnings more easily. Domestic exporters should have fair value for their export proceeds. And if I am a foreign investor, I should be able to remit my dividend easily. In conclusion, for the vision to hold, we need the private sector to partner with us. We are the best. We must work to earn our trust, your trust, by guaranteeing fair return for the sweat of committed investors. Agreed, you have been resilient. Agreed, you've worked really hard. Practically speaking, this will mean the pursuit with renewed vigor of growth promoting employment and creating easy of doing business and poverty eradicating policies as outlined in our manifesto, Renewed Hope 23. 2023, Renewed Hope. Action plan for a better Nigeria. Hold on to it. It's our promise. I've always been and will continue to be a progressive Democrat and be one of you. In my worldview, government has a cardinal responsibility to enable business to thrive. Where the private sector thrives, we will not disrupt it. However, where the private sector cannot do it alone, our government will take on the responsibility of lending an enabling hand. As a government, we must govern. And as your government, we shall always listen to you. Now, you must ask yourself, who can be trusted to accomplish these things? Who has the better plan? Who has the better team? Don't forget my past, and my track record here in Lagos. The man, I am just the man who has done similar things before as governor of Lagos State. I am the man whose blueprint guided the emergence of Lagos State as the 5th largest economy in Africa. Please clap for me. The choice is yours. Let me end by saying this. I fought for this democracy. I was detained for it. I suffered for it. I did so because I believe in our country. I now seek to become Nigeria's next president. I do so because I know what is at stake. I want this nation to have its best chance to progress towards the great destiny. I ask you to join me on the path to a Nigeria of renewed hope and fulfilled dreams. If we do not lead the way, one else will, but to where? Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, permit me to greet you again by saying bon appetit. As I invite a moderator for the interactive session, the Executive Director, Policy Innovation Center of the NESG, Dr. Osasui Dirisu. He will moderate the next session when I say to you again, bon appetit.
Good afternoon, distinguished guests. I would stand on already established protocol. I have the great privilege to welcome His Excellency, the APC presidential candidate, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, for the dialogue session. Thank you, sir. You're welcome, sir. Yes. So you're welcome to come up, sir. Thank you very much, sir. And thank you everyone for listening. So I'll just give a brief introduction about how this dialogue session would go. We would have some time to have questions and answers with His Excellency, and then I'll throw it open for you to ask questions, and then we'll come back to His Excellency for some closing thoughts. Please, as we earlier have, as our chairman has said earlier, this conversation is focused around the economy, and we've listed some of the thematic areas that will guide the conversation. So let that also be the scope when we begin to reflect on questions. Thank you very much. Thank you so much, sir, for the wonderful presentation. You highlighted a lot of very important and thought-provoking issues. I know some of the things you talked about, are the burning issues, on the minds of, everyone here today. But just to pick on a few critical things, you really had security as something that is your top priority to ensure that we have an enabling environment in Nigeria for living and doing business. You talked about removal of the PMS subsidy, and then you also talked about the critical need for power sector reforms. So I'm just trying to, just as we open up this discussion, I want to find out in the first 100 to 200 days in office, what should citizens expect to see if you're elected as president, sir?
Day one, hit the ground running. Day two, continue running. Day three, don't rest. Think and do. Select the best teams that will help build a better Nigeria. Teamship is crucially important. And giving the people opportunity to exercise their talents in turning the ship of the nation and retooling the mindset. Do we believe in ourselves? Or do we continue to make mouse migration? Definitely. The security challenge must be eliminated. With technology, human beings attract more people into the army, given, voluntary army and the equipment necessary, all the tools to fight insecurity must be employed to have a nation that is confident, bold, and peaceful, seeking prosperity for these people. And that's what we do.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. Thank you so much. Now, we like we have, has been highlighted, through the presentations today, the country has experienced, economic growth. Unfortunately, a lot of the growth that we have seen has not translated to improved living conditions for the average citizen. And, some of those things, get us to think around how this has contributed possibly to the rising unemployment levels. Youth unemployment is at unprecedented levels. Even people who are currently employed, some of them are actually underemployed, and we see all those things. What sort of strategies, especially with a focus on the youth, would you employ to tackle issues related to unemployment in the country right now?
Private sector driven opportunity, tackle the power problem head on. People can work by themselves. A common school driver can create a path to fortune if electricity is taken care of and other infrastructural areas. Carrying them along. And the change of mindset, I will repeat that over and over again. Patriotic commitment, the conversion of negativity to a positive drive, and partnership with the private sector to create a job, to put an incentive there. If you hire 500 new employees, why can't I, as a government, give you some tax incentive to offset that payroll and the pension contribution that may be associated with it? I don't want to sit here and reveal all my strategy. I am the first speaker among the three of us running. So they will spy on me. So you will have a limited answer here today. Another day you can bring me back. But that's part of what I do.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. Just going back a bit to the question, because we're looking at youth, we're looking at large numbers, what are your ideas around scaling employment opportunities for this large population of young people who are currently unemployed?
First of all, commodity exchange. Make farming more attractive. The youth that can operate AK-47 can operate better a good tractor to clear the bush and plant the seeds. Retrain them. I will stop here.
Thank you, sir.
I don't want to give you a comprehensive plan that I have because others are coming.
So the 2023 budget proposal suggests that borrowing would be the primary means of funding expenditure, the government budgets. And that brings some challenges that we also need to discuss, because currently projections exceed revenue expectations. What other revenue sources can you identify, Your Excellency? What sort of funding models can we expect from your government if elected to office borrowing? What sort of other funding mechanisms can we expect to use to fund our government budgets?
I did it well, and I did it well, I'm proud, in Lagos. 600 million naira a month internally generated revenue. Today, 50 billion naira every month. I'm making it the 5th largest economy. Let's take one. I won't go to the rest. But right back to the revenue, your savings from oil subsidy. You have an increased revenue. You have a gap there, right? Right back. The opaque exchange rate. Into the revenue. You are not borrowing. Make your oil competitive. Attract foreign investment. If you attract foreign investment with incentives, you have expanded base of money coming in. All you have is a deferred tax period. A creative mind is a fertile land for growth.
Talking about, now that you've brought up, this oil revenue, foreign direct investments, can we discuss a bit more about how you intend to drive direct foreign investments into Nigeria? This is critical to economic growth, and we're at a period when, this has faded, and this is part of the reasons why we have some of these challenges.
Yeah, a beautiful lady. And the problem is talking about age to women. So I don't know how old you are when we started PIA. Look at how many years it took us to conclude on it. No, you don't accept that. That is not growing a nation. Look at the bottleneck on the PIA itself. The one that we have right now. Untie the bottleneck. Make accelerated action. You have proposals you submit today, you must have a timeline for the approval of that project. If I know as an investor that I'm giving you this proposal and expected a return within the next 3-4 weeks, and I get it. It's calendarized. I will bring my money. The more money you have, the more comfortable you become. And you can promote those ideas. There is bureaucratic bottleneck in the establishment. I'm not given to it. I've never worked for government before. I guide the government. I was the governor of Lagos State. That's my first public life government. Deloitte and training, good university education, Deloitte training, ExxonMobil, Auditor General, ExxonMobil, Treasurer. At the time that we are craving and dying of foreign exchange, I don't know what is my luck, that I come time again, foreign exchange problem. But we survived. I remit all our dividends. We completed that building without 2% variation. Look at Falomo LSDPC building. It wasn't complete. Completed about 10 years later, and we started at the same time. Efficiency, transparency. I didn't receive from Julius Baja a notepad to say thank you. I didn't make any demand. I was not trading with treasury fund as a treasurer. Tunde Fashola was my lawyer then. He said, oh, what are you covering here? Okay. But I'm not one of those treasurers that got into trouble. You know how many of them go and research. Clean, transparent, and honest processing of transactions. Jimovia was under one building. But it was one of the most effective letter of credit processors. You submit today, it gives you back your approved on Thursday. Maximum 4 days. People can be envious of his growth today. But he earned it. If we have many private sector groups doing that, I say mindset is critical to human and economic development for the whole world. Tell me, what is the greatest human discovery in the last 1,000 years, if not electricity? Tell me. Tell me, what are we producing and selling to other countries? Not even slippers. We eat the skin of our cows instead of turning them to beautiful bags and shoes. Eliminate that. It's a sign of poverty. It cannot be perpetual. We work hard together, collaborate with private sector. You are all here. When we saw that in the years past, underground train will be so disruptive. Look at him. He's about to commission a blue line. We say monorail. You find a way where there seems to be no way. You will succeed.
Thank you, Excellency. So continuing as a follow-up to this conversation, we're currently facing a fiscal pressure, and Nigeria is on the brink of a debt crisis. I know you've highlighted very critical points around foreign direct investments, domestic production, partnership, and with the private sector. But I just want to find out what your thoughts are around currently fiscal and monetary policy climate within the country, given the fact that we have right now an expansionary fiscal policy, tight monetary policy, which currently they're quite divergent, and we're not able to really make progress. So just to find out what your thoughts around this regarding fiscal and monetary policy.
Let's go back to geometry. Basic geometry that we learned when we were all in secondary school. A parallel line, two lines that don't meet. What are you doing? You are doing a convulsion by tying Ministry of Budget and Economic Planning with the Ministry of Finance. Separate the two. I call my Commissioner for Budget and Economic Planning, Yemi Kadoso, I call him the headmaster. We all gave him the name headmaster because you cannot spend the money that is not budgeted for. And the budget progress and the process must give the result for which it was addressed. It's simple. Today, we don't have a clear line between monetary and fiscal policy. A blind man lost his dog. He's in trouble. I won't say more than that.
Thank you, sir. I'll stop briefly and take questions, then we'll come back to complete the interactive session. So if you have any questions, please put up your hand and take them. Go first. Yes, so she goes first.
So good afternoon, everyone. Standing on protocol. My name is Owen Omogiafo. I am the President Group CEO of Transcorp. It's a delight to be here today, and thank you, Dr. Jai, for the invitation. I am particularly pleased that you focused a lot on power, and you've talked about security, talked about oil and gas. So Transcorp, we have considerable investment in power, because in line with our purpose of improving lives and transforming the society, we recognize that power is what's going to actually catalyze the growth that we all seek across all the sectors, including what you said. In the past year, I've been Group CEO for about 3 years now. The past 6 months, thank you very much, sir. It was quite interesting because as we saw the challenges with the oil and gas sector, we've also been impacted. And to put this in context, Nigeria's power today comes mainly from the thermal and hydro. The thermal is actually 89%. So as we're having the issues with gas, coming from the challenges around the sector, from the oil theft, the vandalization, it's affected the business and affected that sector. It'd be nice to just get some more information. Yes, we don't want to give out your secrets, but for me, as someone who represents investors, because that's what Transcorp is about, we do further investment, it'd be good to get to know more about what we're going to do specifically in this space. Furthermore, of course, as a female and a female in leadership, I would also like to know some more about what we're going to do for more policies that would encourage, create an enabling environment for more female participation in key places. I'm not about token appointments. It's more around, I have the credibility, I have the credentials. And when I say I don't mean Owen, I mean the general female population, whereby we can have certain policies that will enable more women to play in the sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The question of our oil sector, you will have identified the problem. Today, there's artificial intelligence, there's technology that can censor those areas of interventions, illegal interventions. Metering is another thing. Reform that is so critical. To me, having been in that industry before, I was the last person on the also condensate project. I separated it from OPEC countries. Amobu made profit. Why are we commingling? And what is the problem? That we are not today at a great advantage to compete with Russia on gas. Because we have not invested. We didn't put investment on long-term incentive to compete in Europe. Our gas is in the ground. It cannot turn to money until we push out there. What is the problem? Tax variations. The investors was lower taxes. I don't blame them. But I will grant you the lower taxes and take my deferred profit in the future. The deferred profit can be discounted. I'm turned to money today. As long as there's guarantee of no disruption and effective commitment to the sanctity of contract. Simple. I won't say more than that. I have a secret in my pocket.
Women.
These are up. Okay, up. Those are my advisors. So I'm living the life. And the young one, the Shem is there. Okay, Shem is there. It's only yesterday you were not prepared to make this trip. And I said, you must meet me in Lagos. Create the pathway. Please have your seat. Create the pathway. Encourage them. Put the incentive there. The recognition. Yes, our mothers and sisters of those days, they would like to stay home to take care of babies and everything. That's their problem then. Yes. I'm a man in the house. My wife went to the Senate. I was able to manage my life for consecutive 12 years. I carry briefcases for her sometimes. This is no fake. It is happening. Until I was elected to become a presidential candidate, she was still in the Senate. It is only to comply with the ANEC regulation now that we are, playing through. So, you want to know, I'm raised by a single mother. So, all of you females, you can be guaranteed of a better future and good recognition. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Your Excellencies, and good afternoon. I want to thank the NESG for this. I'm very glad to be here. My name's Otumba Francis Meshioye. I'm the president of the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria. I want to thank you very much, Your Excellency, because you appreciate that the private sector has been very resilient. And I want to thank you too that you promised to carry the private sector along if you are elected. Again, I will make an observation from what I've said. It would be unfair to reveal all your economic plans. On this note, we have written a letter to economic management team to have a private engagement. You acknowledge that real sector is very critical to the growth of the economy. We want to talk of the employment of laborers and so many other things they do that really push the growth of the economy. And it was explained during the presentation of NESG Director of Research that we are on minus level in our contribution. Minus 5.7 if I got him very right. This is very pitiful. And to continue to work in that kind of environment, sweating without reward is really very bad. And I know that it is not the intention of any government to do that. It is necessary to have a real interactive period to let the government understand this, and get a response. Why we are cheering for the knowledge, from the knowledge the government wants to offer? Because we suffer the pain. We can explain that this give us this pleasure, this give the pain. Number two, deriving from this, is the fact that at many times policies really sign on, just like we sign off the one you just mentioned before the Russia problems or whatever it is. When this is signed on, the effect on the specific sector were not known at times. Why signing generally, we should know that policies should be national specific, make the specificities of the nation. It is on this note that we want to play with you once again, using this forum, to find time to encourage your economic management team to give us the time. The time frame we gave have lapsed. So we can have another one. We'll be able to spell out. And I'm sure you'll be able to analyze properly at that kind of a forum. Thank you very much.
A good advice. Noted. I don't have to waste your time going over what is very, very obvious contribution. I take it.
So we can have a lot more people speak. Thank you.
I would stand on existing protocol. My name is Frank Aibogun. I'm a director of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group. You alluded to the global economic crisis. And I agree that to a large extent, it serves to impact local economies around the world. But when I look around today, the greatest problems that we face, you could say, are self-inflicted, very disentangled from what is happening around the world. In a crisis, some people suffer and some benefit. In this crisis, it's for Nigeria to benefit, but we are suffering, without any question. And I like the point you have made about being part of also Condorcet and the role you played in Mobile. And I wanted to just ask you, increasingly I hear that people in government see IOCs and others in the business as privileged people. In fact, a senior government official asked the IOCs, if you are complaining so much, why are you still in Nigeria? The truth of the matter is, it is only their body we see, their soul is gone. There is absolute, and I'm sure you know more than I do. What would you do in terms of attitude change? Would your priority be to re-attract private capital from the IOCs back to Nigeria? Because it has little to do with energy transition. Those companies that are leaving Nigeria today, every day we see them set up operational base, sometimes in Africa, and if for gas, mostly in Guyana. So I ask, what would your attitude be to attracting investment from IOCs? And I'm talking about energy, and that's all I'm going to talk about. The other question will be, Olokola LNG and Brass LNG, I was told recently by a diplomat that if we had prosecuted both projects, today Nigeria will be earning $500 million weekly from exporting gas. What would be your attitude to that? Again, to energy. Nigeria has proven reserve of gas, 200 TCF. Russia has 300 TCF. So if you like, we are 66% of Russia. Russia earns $800 to $1 billion selling gas every day to its enemies in Europe, not friends. So we should be selling on a daily basis $600 million from gas. That has nothing to do with global crisis. It is a proper Nigerian failure. What would you do to turn around Nigeria's energy prospects? Thank you, sir.
Compound question. Let me treat this in the best way possible. First of all, look at the stack of the model arrangement we had when there was oil and gas scarcity around the world. Isn't it? We were the king. Even our leaders boasted then that money is not a problem, it's only how to spend it. Now you are broke. So you own 60% of both the gas and the crude on the ground. 60% and you are not the operator. Why not take a critical look and evaluation of that? Could changes in ownership structure or shedding weight bring more revenue to you? These are questions. I don't want Mr. Selito to get my idea. You look at that. to catch the rabbit, you got to give a bait. What is taking them to Guyana? There's some incentive in it. Maybe favorable taxes. But instead of having to dig ground and build a city in Guyana, you already have the infrastructure to some extent here. So negotiate. Give up some of the pork belly areas that Nigeria wants. I'd rather have 40% and you keep 60. If on the long run, it will give me the necessary incentive and the revenue that I need for an accelerated growth and recovery. You find a way to change the formula. There are certain things I know I can't say now. I am the first speaker. But just take it. If you want an omelette, you got to break the egg.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. Sorry, I can only take one last question, please. If you can just make it like 20 seconds, because we have to round up. Yeah. Yes.
Mine is not a compound question. It's a very simple one, sir. My name is Philip Shelbila, and I'm a director of NESG. How would you deal with corruption? All of the things that you've put forward would fail if that is not addressed. Thank you.
Your brief comment, yes.
Good afternoon, Your Excellency. Wasim Hussaini, I'm the Managing Director of Nestle, Nigeria PLC. Looking at the statistics of the past 20 months, I found out that 54% of the people who exited our company exited to leave the country. Not because they retired, not because they were sent out, not because a competitor took them from me. What are the actions of the government to help reduce migration of talents? Thank you.
The one on corruption and
by attracting investment. You know, I know what they're going to do. I've experienced it. I was a security guard. I was a student. Not that they are going for a white-collar job or blue-collar job and they are working in a comfort zone. I was a doorman. I was a security guard because I was going to school at the same time. Not all their paths are roses. I will discourage migration. I will offer you training and retraining. Give incentive, like I said earlier on, to corporate body that might hire 500 or 50 more people, and you can take it in a deferred taxes. I can give you tax free on that, just for them to be here. At least they will consume. And if I recruit more into the police, into the army, and others, they might call me an egusi soup economist, where they are own warehouse economy. The food those I recruit will eat here is grown in Nigeria. It expands the economy of this country. Some of them don't know what is cornflakes before they leave the shore of this country. So you change around the problem of migration only because the idle mind is a devil's workshop. They don't have no choice. On the corruption, you can not eliminate corruption completely and reduce it to zero. You find other means. I met corruption life. Yeah. But if you put incentive in place, I'm very proud of the judges of Lagos State, including magistrates. They were on foot when we got here. No vehicles, no accommodation, no incentive, no hope of retirement. How would they not be offered lift by the criminals? Yeah, you look at that. I changed the dynamics. I changed the system. It worked fine. It is tough now for a judge in Lagos State to be promoted to Court of Appeal because thinking that they will lose that incentive that I put in place for them. Change it round. Now, some are criminally minded. Yes. But lack of consumer credit is part of why we are corrupt. If you say you must pay 5 million for a car at a go, 5 million cash. Eh? It's 12 million. Eh? Yes, 12, 15 million. But in Kaduna, Chinese Tokumbo. Yes. Okay. Now, okay, how do you solve that? Why not bring assembly plants? Look at the density population of the cars on our road. We complain of go slow in Lagos, but we don't make a brake pad. Let's find a way to change things like transformational government of a serious-minded leadership. You are corrupt, you're gone. But I must put incentive in place for you not to be corrupt. If you can take a first or secondary mortgage, that will help you have a roof in your head and pay instrumentally. Unless you are greedy, you will eliminate corruption. The other transaction area, whistleblower, the system that we decriminalize some of them.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Thank you so much for those points. And as we round up, so as we round up now, I just don't know if you have just one final word for everyone here regarding, what your thoughts are around, improving security when you come into office. Just a final word to close.
Final word? Recruit more, decentralize more, community policing, pay them better, put incentive in place, guarantee their health, social welfare, health care scheme.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We've come to the end of this session. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thank you very much, sir, for your time.
Very quickly, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, may I invite Ms. Amina Mena for the vote of thanks.
It's okay. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank you very much for honoring our invitation. And on behalf of the NESG, the board of the NESG, and all the members of the NESG, we are very grateful for this opportunity. As mentioned by the chairman of the NESG earlier on, we are a very apolitical, non-partisan organization, and our focus is to actually bridge the gap between public sector and private sector. As you forge ahead, and we wish you the very best in the presidential elections come the 25th, we would like to state that we offer our hand in partnership. As you mentioned, collaboration, partnerships, think it and do it. That is what the NESG is about. We are here. We hope that should you emerge the president on the 25th of February, you will call on us and we will work with you through your transition. We will offer all the help on policy. We will dialogue with everybody. Our aim is to see a greater Nigeria, a better Nigeria, and a Nigeria that is back on the global map, where we have foreign investors rushing in, as you have mentioned, and an opportunity to implement some of the policies which you have talked about here. As you all return to your various locations, we wish you a safe journey, and we thank you very much for your time. God bless you. Thank you.
Can we please rise for the national anthem?